Imagine a city under siege for 10 full years, and suddenly the enemy army vanishes, leaving behind nothing but a massive wooden horse as a gift. This is the story we've all heard, the Trojan Horse. But the question we'll answer today, did this story actually happen, or is it just a beautiful legend from Homer's epic? How does one love story spiral into a 10-year war? The story says that the Trojan prince Paris abducted Helen, queen of Sparta, so the Greek city-states assembled a massive army, led by Agamemnon, and besieged Troy for 10 full years with no result. Finally, a clever warrior named Odysseus proposed the wooden horse trick, hiding select warriors inside it right in the middle of the city.
So why didn't anyone believe the story for centuries? Because most historians considered it just beautiful literary fiction, like any legend about gods and superhuman heroes. No one expected that the city of Troy itself actually existed in a real place on the map. So who was convinced the story was real when everyone else dismissed it? A German man named Heinrich Schliemann, a wealthy businessman and amateur archaeologist, completely convinced that Homer's story held a hidden historical truth. Unlike most scholars of his era, he decided to travel to modern-day Turkey and dig himself, relying literally on geographic details mentioned in the ancient text itself.
So did Schliemann actually succeed? In 1873, he actually found something massive, the remains of a real ancient city beneath the mound, with stone walls and complete layers of habitation. This discovery shook the entire world. Troy, the city everyone believed was pure fiction, actually existed in reality. But was the Troy Schliemann found just one single city? No, the situation turned out more complex than that. Troy wasn't one city. It was more than 9 cities built on top of each other over thousands of years, each city collapsing or burning, and a new city built above it. So Schliemann was digging into the mound as if cutting through a layer cake, each layer representing a completely different time period.
And did Schliemann actually find King Priam's treasure as he claimed? The answer, no. He found a magnificent gold treasure and got very excited and named it Priam's treasure after the legendary king of Troy. But it was later revealed that this treasure actually belongs to the Troy II layer, about a full 1,000 years older than the supposed Trojan War period. Schliemann had rushed and linked his discovery to the wrong era. So if Schliemann's treasure was in the wrong layer, where's the actual right one? Later archaeologists, like Carl Blegen, studied the layers more precisely and reached a different conclusion. The Troy VI or Troy 7a layer is the closest in time to the supposed Trojan War period, around 1250 to 1180 BCE, and it actually contains traces of destruction and fires that roughly match the story. But how can we be sure this layer actually faced real warfare, not just random destruction? They found compelling physical evidence: scattered stone sling bullets, skeletal remains in unnatural positions, and defensive walls showing repeated damage and repair, as if the city faced successive attacks over a period, not just a single battle. But does the evidence only come from the Greek side itself? No, and even stronger, ancient texts from the neighboring Hittite Empire, modern-day Turkey, mention a city called Wilusa, and many researchers believe it's the same as Troy or Ilion in ancient Greek. This means there's an independent reference from an entirely third civilization.
And here we reach the most important point in the entire video. Despite all the evidence of war and destruction, there is not a single piece of physical evidence for the wooden horse itself. Not one piece of wood, not a single text from the Hittites, Egyptians, or even the Greeks themselves at that time mentions a wooden horse at all. The entire idea is completely absent from any source contemporary to the event. So if there's no physical evidence for the horse at all, what could the idea's actual origin be? Some historians proposed an intriguing alternative theory. Perhaps the horse was originally a poetic symbol for a real siege engine, like a wooden battering ram used to break down walls. And over generations of oral storytelling, the boring technical description transformed into a more exciting image, a complete wooden horse.
And the second theory is stranger. Perhaps the city was actually destroyed by a natural earthquake, not direct warfare. And interestingly, the Greek god Poseidon was the supposed god of the sea, earthquakes, and horses all at the same time. So some researchers suggest the horse was a religious symbol for Poseidon's wrath itself, not an actual instrument of war at all. So why should we trust every detail of a story written centuries after the supposed event? Homer himself wrote the Iliad about 400 to 500 years after the event, relying on an oral tradition passed down generation after generation. Some contemporary researchers emphasize that Homer was a poet seeking a compelling story, not a historian documenting events with precision.
But does Schliemann himself complete trust in all his conclusions? Unfortunately, no. Despite his credit for the discovery, he was a controversial figure. As an amateur without real academic training, his hasty digging methods accidentally destroyed important layers, and he even smuggled part of the treasure he found out of Turkey secretly, which led later scholars to doubt many of his initial conclusions. And if the war wasn't really about a love story, what could it actually be about? There's a stronger possibility for the real motive. Troy's geographic location was highly strategic, at a strait controlling trade routes between Asia and Europe. So the real battle, if it happened, was likely about control and wealth, not a single love story.
So, after all this evidence and these theories, what do most historians today actually conclude? There's likely real history behind a legend, not complete proof of the legend itself. A real war likely happened. Troy was a real city that was actually destroyed, but details like the wooden horse and intervening gods were added later as literary embellishment. So if the horse is fiction, why does its story still captivate us after more than 3,000 years? Because it carries universal human lessons, the pride that precedes a fall, the danger of blind trust, and the cleverness of deception versus the power of direct force. These ideas are universal, not tied to a specific time or place.
And did the horse's story end with its ancient era, or is it still alive among us today? The name itself has become a common technical term, the Trojan virus in computer software, malicious software disguised with an innocent appearance to infiltrate a system. The same ancient deception concept still alive in our digital world today. So after this whole journey, has the mystery been definitively and conclusively solved? Honestly, no. Archaeologists are still digging at the Troy site to this day, discovering new details periodically. Perhaps one day they'll find evidence that changes the whole picture, or perhaps the horse will remain a beautiful literary symbol forever.
So, the Trojan horse, in its specific form, is likely a beautiful piece of literary fiction, but Troy itself was a real city, actually destroyed by war or natural disaster, and its story was passed down through generations until it reached Homer. Sometimes the most beautiful legends are just lovely decoration over a much deeper historical truth. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. More episodes coming on legends and historical events you don't know the full truth about. See you in the next one.